Sometimes the system decides who's guilty before the facts are even finished forming. Sometimes it's a man, sometimes a woman, sometimes something else, and sometimes the truth never gets justice at all. Today, we are discussing two stories, one of them being about karma, a farm animal owner who got his karma, and another one being about a failed police investigation, one in which they caught the wrong suspect. Before I get to that one, let me start with the karma story. Snowball was a goat living in Canton, Georgia. His owner was 77-year-old Carl Holsia. Holsia was found dead by his family at his home. Investigators looked into this. The Cherokee County Coroner's Office established that he had suffered blunt force trauma leading to his death. According to investigators, Holsia repeatedly beat Snowball the Goat, attempting to make him more aggressive. That is something that several neighbors claimed as well. This was not discipline, it was deliberate abuse. The family of Carl Holsia claimed that he did so in order to keep the goat as a guard animal. Eventually, Snowball reacted. One day, the goat butted Holsia and ended up killing him. Carl Holsia was killed by the animal he had spent years provoking. The animal would let its owner beat him, and then he had enough and killed the owner. That is what happened here. Animal control seized Snowball immediately, and at first the plan was simple. The goat would be euthanized, put down. However, a judge at the Cherokee County Municipal Court would have to sign the paperwork in order to officially put the goat down. Due to the suspect being an animal, there was no trial, no hearing, no formal process, just death. But then something unusual happened. The public found out. Those neighbors started discussing the story and submitted a tip to the newspapers they knew. The story went viral. Animal rights protests ensued. Animal lovers across the country flooded Cherokee County officials with phone calls. More than 500 called the animal control offices in this Georgia area, demanding that the goat be spared. People even offered to adopt Snowball. Some arranged protests, meetups. Others issued threats if the goat was killed. There was no official court case deciding Snowball's fate, nor the threats, just overwhelming public pressure. And because of that pressure, officials backed down. Snowball was transferred to the Noah's Ark Rehabilitation Center in Locust Grove, Georgia, where he was neutered to reduce aggression and allowed to live out his life. This center would be his new home moving forward. Years later, in January 2002, Snowball died as he got old. But until then, he lived because people believed abuse mattered, context mattered, and punishment without understanding was wrong. Snowball became a symbol, not of violence, but of reaction to violence. Now take that idea, context, reaction, abuse, and mercy. Remove the mercy. That's where the Nick Hillary case begins. Our next story. Throughout the two stories, after listening, you will notice that two innocent beings were cruelly victimized. Three, I should say, in fact, at first, if you turn over to the very beginning. But closing up this goat story, it seems very unusual for someone like Carl Huntley to be so aggressive towards an animal, because Carl Huntley did not come from any family. He came from a religious family. His brother Henry was a Baptist church reverend. His sister Sally would help out at the Baptist church. And her husband, Harvey, was a reverend as well for the church. Unfortunately, they did not live long enough to explain why their family member was so aggressive. From a more religious point of view, that would have been interesting. Henry died in 1981, Sally in 1989, and Harvey in 1971. The three got old and passed away. Carl, it looks like he had more to live. However, the goat gave him what he deserved and cut his life earlier. Now moving on to the Garrett Phillips story. On October 24th, 2011, 12-year-old Garrett Phillips was found dead in his home in Potsdam, New York. His family immediately believed someone killed him. They called the cops. The Rensselaer County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed their claim. Garrett was indeed murdered. Someone strangled him. The town was small. The pressure was immediate. And law enforcement quickly focused on one man, Oral Hillary, a Jamaican immigrant who some called Nick. He was a soccer coach at Clarkson University, and he was also the former boyfriend of Garrett's mother, Tandy Cyrus. Nick Hillary became the story almost instantly, not because of forensic evidence, not because of eyewitness, but because of proximity and narrative. Everyone was talking about him in the end. 2 days after Garrett's body was found, on October 26, 2011, the police went to Nick Hillary's home and asked him to come to their station. He went to the town's police station voluntarily. At the Potsdam police station, he was read his Miranda rights. He was not officially detained at this point, but the investigators would not let him leave the station. The police confiscated his clothes, keys, phone, and car. There was no warrant. During questioning, Nick Hillary was stripped naked and photographed. He was treated like a slave. When he was finally released, police gave him a hazmat suit to wear because they had taken all of his clothes. And the police did not want to be blamed for having someone commit an act of indecent exposure by walking back home naked. This was not a formal arrest. It was invasive, humiliating, and terrifying. Nick later described it as a violation of his rights. Despite this treatment by the white devil, Nick had witnessed people supporting his alibi. Despite having been kidnapped inside this station for a number of hours, he got to go out free that same day. Law enforcement continued circulating and harassing Nick Hillary. One deputy sheriff, John Jones, was also discussed as someone who may have deserved more scrutiny. Jones had a past relationship with Tandy Cyrus, Garrett's mom. There were timeline inconsistencies. Questions were raised, but officially, authorities did not pursue charges against him. The spotlight stayed on Nick Hillary, the soccer coach. In May 2014, nearly 3 years after Garrett's death, two prosecutors, Mary Rain and William Fitzpatrick, presented a New York State probe to a grand jury at the St. Louis County State Supreme Court. After 16 days, that grand jury returned an indictment, a felony of second-degree murder, The prosecution, after having aggressively taken on this probe, unsealed the indictment and ordered that Nick Hillary be locked up. As Nick returned home from work, he was confronted by the New York State Police and taken away in handcuffs. He would shortly after, the following day, appear before Judge Jerome Richards. Bond was set at $75,000 cash and $150,000 surety. Nick's prepared for his release. However, it would take about 70 days for him to be let out of jail. He hired attorney Christopher Renfro, who went on to bring in 4 extra private lawyers in the area: Peter Dormis, Ed Narrows, Errol Ward, and Norm Seigel. The case moved forward to trial. Nick Hillary's trial began on September 12, 2016. There was no jury. The case would be decided by Judge Felix Catena on September 28, 2016. In this state Supreme Court, Judge Catena delivered the verdict: not guilty. The prosecution failed to meet its burden. The evidence did not prove Nick Hillary murdered Garrett Phillips. To this day, the real killer has not been identified nor arrested. They remain unknown. Nick Hillary did not walk away whole. He filed multiple civil rights lawsuits, alleging unlawful detention, false imprisonment, and violations of his constitutional rights. Some claims were dismissed. Others went to trial in federal court. In June 2022, a federal jury in Albany ruled in favor of the police, finding no legal wrongdoing in how officers handled the detention. The courts closed the door, and the case remains unresolved. Snowball was a goat who had been ambushed. He went on to react and killed the one abusing him, his own owner. Nick Hillary was targeted, humiliated, and prosecuted, treated like an animal, not because evidence demanded it, but because the system needed someone to blame. And Nick, being black, an immigrant, he had his rights violated and was used in order to produce this false blame. One survived because the public demanded mercy. The other survived, but only barely and without justice. The real killer of this 12-year-old boy is still out there, and the question remains: who gets benefit of context, and who gets crushed by narrative? Thank you for listening. May those affected rest in peace. Take care and have a good rest of your day.